Well, now what the heck is going on? My fellow intrepid voyagers on this magical journey of self-discovery and DIY, how are y'all doing? You're with Doc, and you saw my last video, right? Part 1, the video where I revealed that I took a Copart nightmare and turned it into something a little more drivable. Yes? No? Look, this is part 2 of that series, so and there are only 2 parts, so trust me. Go watch the first video, and I'll wait here. Hum-de-doo-dum, la-la-la. Oh, you're back. Nice. Let's get going on episode 2 of Cherokee Therapy, the series where I, Doc, your old, balding, and bitter has-been, takes you by the arm and leads you into a crazy realm filled with junkyard cars and stupid decisions. It almost sounds like the biography of Amber Heard, am I right? When last we spoke, I'd showed you a preview of what I encountered as soon as I got my Copart Jeep into my garage and started to witness the horror of what I'd purchased. Remember, I said that only up until that point I'd had experience working on Japanese cars. Yeah, well, I should also say that I had no experience with solid axle vehicles or serious four-wheel drive vehicles. So a number of things popped up immediately once I started digging into the guts of the Jeep XJ. And you need to know this. If you plan on heading down this road, you need more tools. I'm going to do a video on basic tools you need, general tools to get into DIY auto repair, but this one ain't it. And I'm not a fan of those videos that tell you, oh, you can do this job with what you have in the house already. Yeah, you can, but you're going to be miserable and decide that you're never going to work on your car ever again. And the problem is you just didn't have the right tools. So what I'm about to list here are what you need to get started working on something like a Jeep Cherokee. Number 1, your build sheet. Just contact Jeep with your VIN number. It's amazing. You reach out to them, email your VIN number to them, ask for your build sheet, and then they'll send it to you. A list of all the parts they included in your original build. They answered my email in like an hour. I mean, it was really fast. Number 2, bigger jack stands. If you're going to lift your Jeep or for whatever reason need to be able to let the suspension hang loose on your Jeep, you either need a hydraulic lift or you need a stand rated for more than 3 tons. So you're going to need a bigger one than you can get in like AutoZone and stuff. In fact, I had to go with, I think, 12-ton stands. I'll put a picture up here because bigger stands allow you to achieve more height so that the suspension can hang. Not to mention that, look, I feel much safer with beefy 12-ton stands holding the car up than I do with those comparatively small 3-ton stands. Number 3, Torx bits for your sockets. Jeep, for some reason, likes to mix up Torx with metric nuts and bolts. With imperial nuts and bolts. It's just a mess. So make sure you have a little of everything. Number 4, one special Torx bit. It is a Jeep. They have all sorts of special needs for replacing the gaskets in your oil filter adapter. The Jeep engineers decided that they weren't going to just slap on it. They weren't going to make it so you could just slap on an oil filter right to the side of the engine block. Instead, they have this adapter that makes an L turn, so that the filter, you can actually have a filter in there because there's not a lot of space where the filter needs to go. So it's also a well-known Jeep leak spot because you've got 3 gaskets, I think 3 O-rings or something in the filter adapter. And there's only like a couple of Torx bits out there that you'll be able to use because, again, it's a tight space and you don't have enough space for a full socket. I ordered these 2 Torx bits from Snap-on, one without the socket and the one with the socket. And I got them both because I wasn't sure if the one without the socket attachment was going to be short enough to use in that space. So I bought the socket one because I thought that maybe the Torx bit in there was a little bit shorter and I could hammer it out somehow. In any case, I think the one labeled STX60E2 from Snap-on worked. So if you're watching this and you know of Torx bits that also work, please put them in the comments. It's been a while. I think this is what I used, but I'm old. I'm senile. I can't even remember my name sometimes. And you get the picture. I'm just kidding. Number 5, 13 millimeter 12-point socket for the hub bolts up front if you plan on needing to remove the hubs for whatever reason. And I think you need to do that for a lot of things if you're going to work on your suspension and steering and axles up front and all that kind of stuff. Number 6, a 1/2-inch drive, 1/2-inch 12-point socket for the cylinder head bolts. If you're going to remove the cylinder head for whatever reason, you're going to need that. Now, again, keeping with this motif, number 7, the rear head bolt, number 14, is the infamous cylinder head bolt at the very back of your engine, and this one sucks. In order to remove it and torque it back down, you're going to need a set of 12-point non-metric double box end wrenches. You need the whole set, I would say, because there's a lot of stuff you end up using them for in your Jeep. And you can hammer on these things. And you're going to need the 1/2-inch one in that set to use as an extension for torquing down that rearmost head bolt if you ever have to replace the cylinder head. What am I at? Number 8? I think I'm on number 8. Anyway, 8. Jeep front ends have 4 ball joints, 2 on each knuckle. So since I had to replace all 4, I went ahead and bought a cheap ball joint press on Amazon. But you're also going to need a separate ball joint adapter for Jeep Dodge. And one of the reasons I went ahead and bought it is usually I rent tools like this, but in this case, I had a really hard time finding that combination. You can find the ball joint press, but finding the right adapter, I just had a tough time, so I wound up buying it off of Amazon. Okay, so that's all I can remember up at this point of the special tools you're going to need up front, and these are just suggestions. But obviously, if you're planning on not doing major engine work, you can skip some of them. Also, as I go through and give individual tips in future videos, I'll list other tools you'll need for those individual jobs. So, stay tuned and look out for that. But luckily, most things you can just rent, like I mentioned earlier, from an auto parts store. And my favorite in that case is O'Reilly's. They seem to have a good selection. Thanks. Sorry, maybe I'm losing my mind. So let me show you what I found when first beginning to take apart my Jeep. And for those of you with a weak stomach, a word of caution. What I'm about to show you is the most disgusting and grotesque set of images you'll likely ever see. In fact, YouTube may take down this video. It's so gross. So unless you live in the Rust Belt, in which case you're pointing at me when I show you these images and laughing and calling me a big girl's blouse, because really this isn't so bad compared to stuff that happens up there. But it was bad enough for me. Number 1. The OEM steel wheels were totally rusted. Not like rusted through, but definitely had a pretty good patina going there. And in fact, I had to use a torch just to break them free. And they were so stuck on that for a while I thought some moron had tack welded them to the hubs. Number 2, the shocks looked like they'd never been replaced. These were completely rusted out, along with virtually all the front end steering and suspension components. The U-joints were bad. Everything was bad. So I had to get new hubs, new knuckles, and like everything. I don't have a pick, but the OEM steering knuckles were so rusted that they look like an old book, like the rust was coming off in hundreds of those sheets and page-like things, big flakes, so that only a narrow strip of actual metal remained. I wound up having to buy brand new steering knuckles for this thing. Number 3, this was the OEM steering assembly. In hindsight, I should have kept the parts, in case I ever sell this thing and somebody wants the original stuff, but I was so disgusted by the torn boots, grime, and rust that I just chucked it all. Number 4, front Dana 30 axle. It looked really awesome inside. This was actually some good news. The gears were all in good shape, no pitting or chipping, so I breathed a sigh of relief there. Number 5, the rear end was completely in shambles. Drum brakes, you guys. If you don't like drum brakes, stay away from these old cars or plan on doing the disc brake upgrade. I had to do a full service on each drum brake, basically replacing everything. And take a look at this picture. Look carefully. If you see all that dirt on the ground, that's rust. It came off I have a Chrysler 8 1/4 axle in the rear, and it came off of that. A lot of it came off of the exhaust, and a lot of it came out of parts of the frame that I'll show you in a second. Number 6, the entire exhaust system was rusted through, gone. And this Jeep has the California emissions package, so it has 2 catalytic converters up front and 1 in the rear. And only the rear cat really looked usable. In fact, it's still on there. The rest of it was crap. And listen, people, exhaust systems are expensive, especially the 2 cats up front kind. And installing them is really hard to get right. So this was a big blow to me. I was not happy to see that. Number 7, the engine was definitely used and abused, but not in horrible, horrible shape. The AC system doesn't work, and the heater core hoses were definitely spongy, so a lot of what you're seeing here, it had to all be replaced. Fan belt was old, exhaust header rusted like hell, the wiring looms were all cracking. Airbox looked good, I think In addition to the airbox, there's a bunch of stuff in this area that was actually okay, which is surprising because this is where a lot of the heat comes from above the exhaust manifold. And the master brake cylinder and booster were good too. So I've lost track of I'm supposed to be counting these things, and I think I'm up to number 10. But this is the long story that I'll make short. XJ years 2000 to 2001 had modified cylinder heads, which unfortunately had a defect. And this is the dreaded 0331 casting everybody talks about. So like I said, I'm not going to make this a long story, but I pulled my cylinder head, had it tested at a local machine shop, and sure enough, mine was cracked. Just ignore the yellow circle on this pick. That was for something else I needed to buy, like a stud or something that was sticking off the side. Number 11, in addition to my cylinder head gasket was blown. It looked like between cylinders 3 and 4, just totally gutted. Number 12, everything in the engine bay was covered with 1/8 of an inch of sludge, oil, grime. I don't know what this crap was. It was nasty. Number 13, cylinders were as dirty as they come. Look at all that crusted on carbon. See where the head gasket on the left had merged with the steel of the head itself? Yeah, that was fun to get off. Also, these lifter galleys on the left filled and packed with sludge. I'm not kidding. I didn't know how I was going to deal with that. 14. This, what you're looking at here, is a close-up of a couple of the cylinders in case you doubted me about the carbon. Also, take a closer look at the rusted cats off to the bottom there. And number 15, those are the nasty-ass lifter galleys. 16, last but not least, rusted frame. Look, this is bad, but I got lucky. Most of the frame is fine in this car. In fact, it was leaking oil so badly that I'd say the front 3/4 of the car undercarriage was completely covered in oil and transmission fluid, which protected it. So that was the good news. But in the rear, especially over the exhaust, the previous owner had put on this towing package that bolted to the frame, and it trapped water between the frame and the towing package. So there you see it rusted through in 2 spots, in addition to rusting through where the bump stop bolted to the frame and water got trapped. So actually this could be worse. I'm going to have a welder fix all this and hope that he does a good job welding a unibody. Okay, so that's it. Partly because I can't go on any further. This walk down memory lane reminds me of how depressing it was to get a closer look at this Copart thing, and reminded me how many times I had wondered if I'd made some horrible mistake as I was working on this car. But here's the thing. Yeah, it took me a while, but I got most of this fixed, except for the frame rust holes, which, I'm still going to need to get welded, but hopefully that's happening soon. Car repair is like hiking up a steep, tall mountain. Nobody likes it when you're doing it. But afterward, you look back, and it's kind of an accomplishment. You did this. You took an awful hunk of rusty metal, turned it into something awesome, and it's a hell of a feeling. I can't explain it to people who aren't into doing this stuff. Now, would I recommend that you go and do what I did and go to Copart? Hell no. Including the cost of the car itself, plus shipping and tags, and all that other stuff. You want to know what my parts bill is so far? Not parts bill, but actually the total bill? $12,420. That's right. I'm not kidding. And part of that is because, it's because of supposedly cheap aftermarket parts that I've had to replace multiple times when they fail. Another part is because I had 2 major failures, each of which were super expensive: the exhaust and the cylinder head. Together, those cost about $2,000 to replace. And especially when you factor in that I did some upgrades, like my rocker arms I upgraded. I'll show you that in a future video. And then there was the cost of all those additional tools that I had to buy. Those are also factored into the total cost, $12,420. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, if you're thinking about taking the DIY plunge, regardless of whether it's a Jeep or some other car, is have you budgeted everything? You got to be careful about this stuff. You got to factor in tools. You got to factor in the unexpected. You got to factor in all sorts of stuff. And I'll end with this. The only reason these costs make sense to me, in terms of going the Copart route, is because I'm making these videos and gambling that I can grow this into a solid channel. Boy, I hope I'm right. You might have a different set of considerations than I do. So only you can answer these questions for yourself. And the only advice I'd give at this point is that if you value your life, your wallet, and your soul, do not go near Copart cars thinking that you can do some quick and cheap DIY magic on them. Maybe you can. Maybe you'll get lucky. But I'm guessing that chances are you won't. I didn't get lucky here, so I'm trying to turn a lemon into something else. And it's so far so good. But you really need to kind of think about this and give it a long, hard and think, because you can find yourself out a lot of money if you go down the Copart route and wind up with something even worse than I did. Oh, you made it to the end. That's awesome. Listen, I'm Doc. I'm the one who's, the voice behind these videos. And I really appreciate you taking the time to actually watch the whole thing. That's fantastic. If you've got time, if you want to, if you like the video, hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the bell button so you get notified of new videos when I put them up. I'm going to try and do one a week. And I'm going to do a bunch of Instagram stuff, so make sure you follow me there and on Twitter. Instagram's going to be the shorter stuff. I don't have any merchandise yet. I'm planning to as the channel grows. If I succeed, I'll get some merch. For now, if you really want to help me in another way, you like these videos enough, I'm going to put links to my books in the description of the video. I'm a science fiction author in my spare time as well, so I'm juggling a lot of balls. But anyway, I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you at the next one. Hey, do me a favor and turn this junk off. I don't know how to deal with tech.